My name is Brant, 32 years old, and a marketing executive who has been financially supporting my struggling family for years. I drove 6 hours through light snow with a trunk full of carefully wrapped presents, excited to surprise everyone for Christmas. I still remember the gut-wrenching shock when my mother opened the door, looked me straight in the eyes and said coldly, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong house," before starting to close the door on me. Before I tell you how I went from family ATM to cutting them off, completely drop a comment where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if family drama gets your attention. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where life was relatively stable until I turned 14. That was when my father announced he was leaving my mother for his administrative assistant at work, a woman 12 years his junior. The divorce devastated my mother Linda emotionally and financially. She had been a stay-at-home mom for most of her adult life, with only part-time retail experience that did little to prepare her for suddenly becoming the sole provider for 3 children. My younger siblings, Jason, who is 4 years younger than me, and Amy, who is 7 years my junior, stayed with Mom while I split time between both parents during high school. Dad moved 40 minutes away with his new wife, starting what he called his second chance at life, which apparently meant minimal involvement with his first family. From early on, I recognized that education would be my ticket to stability. While my mother sank into depression and bitterness, I threw myself into schoolwork and after-school jobs. I stacked shelves at the local grocery store on weekends, mowed lawns in summer, and shoveled driveways in winter. By senior year, my hard work paid off. I received a partial scholarship to University of Illinois at Chicago, where I pursued a marketing degree. College years were tough. I worked nearly full-time at a campus bookstore while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. Meanwhile, things at home continued to deteriorate. Mom found work at a local factory but constantly complained about her supervisor and coworkers. Jason dropped out of community college after 1 semester, cycling through minimum wage jobs without finding direction. Amy, the baby of the family, seemed to be following in my footsteps academically, but struggled with the financial realities of college aspirations. My breakthrough came during my senior year of college when I landed an internship at Horizon Marketing Group, a prestigious firm in downtown Chicago. The internship turned into a job offer, and suddenly I was making more money than I had ever seen in my bank account. $52,000 a year felt like a fortune to someone who had grown up watching my mother clip coupons and buy day-old bread. That same year, the recession hit Michigan particularly hard. Mom was laid off from the factory, along with hundreds of others, as manufacturing continued to leave the state. Jason had just been fired from his 3rd job in 8 months this time from a warehouse where he had gotten into an argument with his manager. Amy was about to graduate high school, but already worried about mounting student loan debt. The first time I sent money home was for a simple emergency. Mom's car needed new brakes, and she couldn't afford the $400 repair. It felt good to help, to be the son who could swoop in and solve problems. I sent the money without hesitation, never expecting anything in return. Mom was tearfully grateful, promising to pay me back when things turned around. They never did turn around. That first financial rescue opened a floodgate. Soon I was helping with utility bills when they fell behind. Then I started covering part of their rent when eviction notices appeared. By my 3rd year at Horizon, I had established a regular monthly transfer of $800 to Mom's account money that was ostensibly for the house, but that I knew supported all 3 of them. I lived in a cramped studio apartment in one of Chicago's less desirable neighborhoods to make this arrangement work. While my colleagues bought new cars and took weekend trips to nearby lake houses, I pinched pennies and postponed my own dreams. No vacations, no retirement savings, no emergency fund. Everything extra went back to Michigan. I justified it easily. They were family. They needed help. Things would improve soon. Dad had remarried again and moved to Florida, completely washing his hands of his parental responsibilities. Someone had to step up, and that someone was me. Besides, I told myself I was building good karma. I was doing the right thing. But even as I rationalized my choices, resentment began to grow. Phone calls home inevitably included hints about new financial needs. Mom never asked directly. She was too proud for that. But she mastered the art of sighing heavily about bills while reminding me how much Jason and Amy looked up to their successful big brother. Last Christmas had been particularly tense. I had been saving for months to buy everyone nice gifts, but a surprise rent increase at my apartment building stretched my budget to the breaking point. When I showed up with modest presents, a sweater for Mom, headphones for Jason, and a gift card for Amy, I could feel their disappointment. Nobody said thank you. Instead, Mom mentioned how the neighbor's son had bought his parents a cruise for Christmas. Jason asked if the headphones were the knockoff brand. Amy used the gift card that same day, then texted to say it hadn't been enough to buy what she wanted. I drove back to Chicago with knuckles white on the steering wheel, wondering if I would ever be enough for them. This year was going to be different. I had received a promotion at work, bumping my salary to $76,000. I had carefully budgeted for months, setting aside money for truly impressive gifts. A laptop for Mom to replace her ancient desktop, a high-end gaming console for Jason, and a tablet for Amy to use at college. I had even splurged on small luxuries, perfume, gourmet chocolates, cashmere scarves. For once, I wanted to see genuine appreciation on their faces. I wanted to feel like the hero I had been trying to be for so long. What I didn't realize was that heroes are only welcome when they play their assigned roles, and apparently mine was limited to sending money from a distance, not actually showing up in person. The drive from Chicago to Grand Rapids on Christmas Eve should have been peaceful. I left my apartment at 6 in the morning, hoping to avoid the worst of the holiday traffic. The sky was clear. As I pulled onto Y-94, my car packed with wrapped presents and homemade dishes. I had spent the previous night cooking sweet potato, casserole, macaroni and cheese, and apple pie, all Mom's recipes that she had taught me years ago when I was the only kid interested in helping in the kitchen. Light snow began to fall as I crossed the Michigan state line, dusting the barren trees and transforming the landscape into something from a Christmas card. I smiled to myself, feeling the familiar pull of nostalgia that always accompanied trips home. Despite the complications in our relationship, Michigan still represented home to me in a way that my Chicago apartment never had. I stopped at a gas station in Kalamazoo to refuel and picked up some last-minute stocking stuffers, lottery tickets for Mom, beef jerky for Jason, and chocolate for Amy. Small traditions that dated back to childhood, when Dad would always make a final stop before arriving home on Christmas Eve. As I merged back onto the highway, I called my friend Derek, who had been my voice of reason throughout my complicated family dynamics. "You sure about this surprise visit?" he asked. "You know how your mom gets about unexpected changes to her plans." "It will be fine," I assured him, though. A small knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I told them I couldn't make it because of work, but they will be happy to see me. Plus, wait until they see what I got them this year. "Just don't expect too much gratitude," Derek cautioned. "From what you have told me, they are not exactly the appreciative type." I laughed off his concern too, caught up in my fantasy of a perfect family Christmas to heed his warning. The final stretch of highway passed quickly, and soon I was navigating the familiar streets of my hometown. Everything looked smaller, somehow confined in a way that Chicago never felt. I drove past my old high school, the park where I had my first kiss, and the convenience store where I bought my first lottery ticket on my 18th birthday. The memories washed over me, both comforting and disorienting. When I turned onto Maple Street, I immediately noticed something unusual. The driveway of our modest two-story house was full of cars. At least 5 vehicles were parked there, none of which I recognized. Additional cars lined the street, suggesting a sizable gathering inside. My mother had never mentioned having company for Christmas, but then again, our conversations had been brief and superficial lately. I parked half a block away, excitement building, as I imagined surprising not just my family but their guests as well. The snow was falling more heavily now, creating a picturesque scene as I unloaded armfuls of presents from my trunk. Balancing the stack carefully, I made my way up the shoveled walkway to the front door. Through the frosted glass panels, I could see colored lights blinking, and hear the muffled sounds of laughter and Christmas music. The smell of roasting turkey wafted through the door, reminding me of childhood Christmases when money was tight but happiness wasn't. I shifted the packages to one arm and rang the doorbell, heart pounding with anticipation. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing my mother in a red sweater I had never seen before, looking more put together than she had in years. Her hair was freshly colored, her makeup carefully applied. For a split second, her eyes lit up with the automatic response of someone answering the door to expected company. Then her gaze focused on me, and her expression transformed into something unrecognizable: shock, followed immediately by what I can only describe as horror. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice unnaturally high. I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Mom, it is me. Surprise Merry Christmas." She didn't laugh in return. Instead, she stepped forward, partially closing the door behind her to block my view inside. "I am sorry," she said firmly. "I think you have the wrong house." The presents nearly slipped from my grasp as confusion washed over me. "Mom, what are you talking about? It is me, Brant." Her eyes darted nervously over my shoulder to the street behind me, then back to my face. "There is no one by that name here. You must be mistaken." Before I could respond, the door opened wider, and my brother Jason appeared beside her. He was wearing a button-down shirt and tie, something I had never seen him voluntarily put on before. His eyes widened when he saw me, but instead of greeting me, he placed a hand on Mom's shoulder. "Everything okay out here?" he asked pointedly, not acknowledging me. "This gentleman seems to have the wrong address," Mom said, her voice steady now. "He was just leaving." Over their shoulders, I caught a glimpse of the living room. The Christmas tree was bigger and more elegantly decorated than any we had ever had growing up. Unfamiliar faces turned toward the door, with curious expressions, well-dressed people holding wine glasses and cocktails. I spotted Amy sitting on the couch next to an older man in an expensive-looking suit, both of them now staring toward the commotion at the door. "Jason," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, "what is going on? Why is Mom acting like she does not know me?" My brother's face remained impassive, but his eyes conveyed a message, something between apology and warning. "Sir," he said loudly, "I think you should go. You clearly have the wrong house." I stood there, in stunned silence, as my mother firmly repeated, "I am sorry. I think you have the wrong house," and closed the door in my face. The sound of the lock clicking into place jolted me back to reality. I stood on the porch, arms still full of presents as snow accumulated on my shoulders and the packages in my arms. From inside, the sounds of the party resumed, as if the interruption had never happened. In a daze, I turned and walked back to my car, snow crunching beneath my boots. I placed the presents carefully in the trunk, closed it, and sat in the driver's seat, staring at the house that had just rejected me. Lights glowed warmly in every window. Shadows moved across the curtains as people mingled inside. Christmas music drifted faintly through the air. I sat there for 15 minutes, engine off, watching my childhood home, and the celebration I was explicitly not welcome to join. The family I had sacrificed for, supported and loved, had just pretended not to know me, and I had absolutely no idea why. I drove to the nearest hotel in a state of emotional numbness. The Holiday Inn Express, on the outskirts of town, was predictably decorated for Christmas. A synthetic tree in the lobby, garlands draped over the front desk, and Bing Crosby crooning White Christmas through overhead speakers. The contrast between the manufactured holiday cheer and my internal devastation was almost too much to bear. Visiting family for the holidays, the receptionist asked brightly as I checked in. "Something like that," I mumbled, unable to explain the bizarre reality that I had just been turned away by my own mother. My room was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the parking lot where my car sat, dusted with fresh snow. I placed my overnight bag on the bed, but couldn't bring myself to unpack. This was supposed to be a day trip, drive up, surprise the family, enjoy Christmas Eve together, and drive back to Chicago on Christmas Day. I had not planned on spending $120 for a hotel room in my hometown. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my coat, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had I misunderstood something fundamental about my relationship with my family? Were they angry with me for some reason? Had I done something unforgivable without realizing it? The television offered nothing but Christmas specials and holiday movies, happy families gathering around trees and dinner tables, reinforcing everything I was missing. I turned it off and sat in silence, watching the snow continue to fall outside my window. At 6:15, approximately 30 minutes after I had been turned away from my family's door, my phone rang. Jason's name appeared on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. Brant Jason sounded nervous, his voice lowered as if he didn't want to be overheard. "Where are you?" "At the Holiday Inn Express." "Why?" There was a pause, and I heard a door close on his end of the line. "Look, I'm sorry about what happened earlier. Mom wasn't expecting you." "Obviously," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "What I don't understand is why she pretended not to know me." Jason sighed. "It's complicated. We have guests over." "I saw that. Who are those people?" "Mom's new boyfriend Howard and his family. They're they're pretty well off. He owns a chain of car dealerships across the state." The pieces began to fall into place, creating a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see, and you couldn't introduce me because... Another pause, longer this time. "Don't be upset, but you know we couldn't let you in." "No, Jason. I don't know that. Please explain it to me." He lowered his voice further. "Howard thinks Mom comes from a better background than she does. She told him Dad was a successful businessman who died, not a deadbeat who ran off with his secretary. She's been upgrading our family history. And I don't fit into this upgraded version." The hollowness in my chest expanded. "It's just that you're ordinary. Your apartment, your car, your job, they're all so average. Howard's family is really into status and appearances. Mom wanted to impress them." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you told them what? That you don't have an older brother?" "We said you're traveling abroad, working in London for some big international firm." The absurdity of the situation might have been comical if it hadn't been so painful. So Mom pretended not to know her own son to impress her boyfriend. "I understand you're upset. Do you? Do you understand that I've been sending Mom $800 every month for rent? That I've been paying Amy's car insurance? That I bought you a new phone when yours broke last month?" "We appreciate all that," Jason said quickly. "You know we do. It's just one Christmas, Brant. It's not that big a deal." I took a deep breath, trying to control the anger and hurt threatening to overwhelm me. "You're right. It's not a big deal. I understand." "You do?" He sounded relieved. "Yes. Merry Christmas, Jason." "Merry Christmas, Brant. I'll call you tomorrow. Okay?" I didn't answer. I just ended the call and placed my phone on the nightstand. Or so I thought. As I set the phone down, I heard Jason's voice continuing faintly. He hadn't hung up, and neither had I. The call was still connected. "Handled it." It was Amy's voice, distant, but audible. "Yeah, he's fine." Jason's voice was clearer, now no longer hushed. "He says he understands." Did he sound upset? That was my mother? "A little, but what did you expect?" "You literally told him he had the wrong house." A woman laughed, Amy, I thought. What were we supposed to do? Howard's whole family is here. We can't exactly introduce our brother, who lives in a crappy apartment in Chicago, when we've been telling everyone he's some hotshot executive in Europe. Besides, my mother added, he still thinks helping with rent means he's automatically included in family events. We never invited him. "At least, he's good for the money," Jason replied. "Remember how pissed he was when I didn't thank him for those cheap headphones last year? Like I was supposed to be grateful for something you could buy at a gas station." "Well, as long as he keeps paying, he can be upset all he wants," my mother said dismissively. "Howard is about to propose. I saw the ring box in his coat pocket. Once we're married, we won't need Brant's money anyway." "Should we tell him that?" Amy asked. "Not until it's official," Mom replied. "No reason to cut off the extra income just yet." I sat frozen phone in hand as their conversation continued. They discussed Howard's wealth, the gifts he had bought them, and their plans to move into his lakefront home after the wedding. Not once did they express remorse about turning me away or gratitude for years of financial support. Instead, they laughed about how easily manipulated I had been, how I could be counted on to send money without question, while they built a new life that explicitly excluded me. With shaking hands, I finally ended the call. The silence in the hotel room was deafening. Outside, Christmas lights twinkled along the highway, and families traveled to gatherings where they were wanted and welcomed. In that moment, every excuse I had made for my family's behavior over the years crumbled. Every rationalization dissolved. Every hope that my sacrifices were appreciated evaporated. I thought about all the times I had eaten ramen noodles for dinner so I could send money home. The vacations I had never taken, the apartment upgrades I had postponed, the retirement account I had not funded, all to support a family that saw me as nothing more than an ATM, with feelings they could manipulate. As painful as this revelation was, it also brought clarity. For the first time in years, I saw my family for who they truly were, not who I wanted them to be. That clarity fueled what happened next. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my mind suddenly sharp despite the emotional turmoil. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was about years of one-sided sacrifice, of being valued only for what I could provide financially while being emotionally discarded. I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking portal. For years, I had been making direct deposits to my mother's landlord for the rent, $800 each month, transferred automatically on the 1st. I found the recurring payment and clicked cancel. A warning message appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment?" I hesitated for only a moment before clicking yes. Next, I navigated to my credit card accounts. Both Jason and Amy were authorized users on my main credit card, an arrangement that had started during their respective emergencies, but had become a regular source of expenses for me. Video game purchases for Jason, clothing and restaurant charges for Amy. I had justified it as helping them through rough patches, but those rough patches had somehow stretched into years. I removed them both as authorized users, then placed a freeze on the accounts just to be certain they couldn't somehow reactivate their cards. My mother and I had opened a joint checking account years ago, ostensibly to make it easier for me to help with emergency expenses. In practice, it had become another way for her to access funds whenever she wanted. The account currently held just over $3,000 money I had deposited last week to cover January expenses. I transferred every penny back to my personal account, then initiated the paperwork to remove myself from the joint account entirely. Each action I took should have brought guilt, or at least hesitation. Instead, I felt a growing sense of liberation. The invisible chains of financial obligation that had bound me to my family for so long were being broken link by link. I drafted an email to my mother's landlord explaining that I would no longer be making payments toward the rent and that any future arrangements would need to be made directly with Linda Patterson. I kept it professional and brief, resisting the urge to explain the personal circumstances behind my decision. As a final measure, I blocked all 3 family members' phone numbers. I knew the fallout would be immediate once they discovered what I had done, and I wasn't emotionally prepared to handle their reactions. With my financial ties severed, I sat back and let the reality of my situation sink in. I was alone on Christmas Eve in a hotel room in my hometown, completely cut off from my family, partly by their choice and partly by mine. The room service menu offered a limited selection of holiday options. I ordered the turkey dinner, with all the trimmings, a bottle of red wine, and a slice of pumpkin pie. While I waited for it to arrive, I walked to the window and stared out at the snow-covered parking lot. Families were checking in, carrying presents and overnight bags, laughing and hurrying through the cold. Normal families spending the holiday together. Families who wanted to be together. When my dinner arrived, I set it up at the small desk by the window. The turkey was dry, the stuffing clearly from a box, the mashed potatoes lumpy. It bore no resemblance to the Christmas dinner happening at my mother's house, where Howard's family was probably enjoying prime rib or ham with expensive wine and elaborate desserts. I thought about the presents still sitting in my trunk: the laptop for Mom, the gaming console for Jason, the tablet for Amy, thousands of dollars in gifts for people who had slammed the door in my face. What would I do with them now? Return them? Give them away? The decisions could wait for tomorrow. As I ate my solitary meal, I tallied up the financial support I had provided over the years. Monthly rent contributions for 5 years, $48,000. Utilities and groceries, roughly $15,000. Car payments, insurance, phone bills, medical expenses, and countless emergencies, at least another $20,000. Education costs for Amy, around $12,000 so far. All told, I had given my family close to $100,000 since graduating college. $100,000 that could have been invested, saved for a house, used for my own future. Instead, it had disappeared into the black hole of my family's endless needs that apparently didn't include having me present in their lives. The wine helped dull the edge of my pain, but it couldn't completely numb the profound sense of betrayal. I had built my entire adult identity around being the responsible one, the provider, the good son who took care of his family after his father abandoned them. Who was I, if not that person? I fell asleep with the television on, the sound of "It's a Wonderful Life" providing background noise to my decidedly unwonderful Christmas Eve. My last thought before drifting off was that George Bailey had it wrong sometimes. The absence of one person from a family's life doesn't make much difference at all. Sometimes that person is only valued for what they can give, not who they are. I woke up Christmas morning to the sound of my phone vibrating repeatedly on the nightstand. When I finally checked it, I found 49 missed calls accumulated overnight. 20 from Mom, 17 from Jason, 12 from Amy. They had started around 10 p.m., about the time they would have discovered their credit cards were declined if they tried to make purchases. The voicemails told a story of escalating panic and anger. "Brant, it's Mom. Call me back immediately." Her voice was controlled but tight. "What the hell, Brant, my card just got rejected at the gas station. Call me back." Jason, annoyed, but not yet alarmed. "Brant, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the accounts. Call me as soon as you get this." Mom again, worry creeping in. "Are you seriously pulling this childish stunt? Because we were busy on Christmas Eve. Grow up and call me back." Amy, indignant. As the night progressed, the messages became more desperate. "Brant, please. I don't know what's gotten into you, but we need to talk. Howard's family just left and we can discuss everything. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Mom, now attempting damage control. "Look, I'm sorry about what happened, okay? But cutting off the credit cards is extreme. I was counting on that for gas money to get back to school." Jason, realizing the situation was serious. Mom's freaking out about the rent payment. "Did you really cancel it? What are we supposed to do? You know she can't afford the place on her own." Amy, the reality of their financial situation finally hitting her. The text messages were equally frantic, ranging from angry accusations to tearful pleas. My mother claimed there had been a misunderstanding. Jason wavered between apologizing and threatening to tell everyone what kind of brother you really are. Amy oscillated between guilt-tripping about her education being ruined and reminding me that family is supposed to support each other no matter what. I turned off my phone again and ordered breakfast from room service. As I ate, I contemplated my next steps. I had planned to check out and drive back to Chicago immediately, but something told me the confrontation wasn't over yet. That intuition proved correct when the hotel room phone rang at 9:30. "Mr. Patterson. This is Melanie at the front desk. There's a woman here claiming to be your mother. She's quite insistent about speaking with you." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made a decision. "Tell her I'll meet her in the lobby in 15 minutes. I showered and dressed slowly, mentally preparing for the confrontation ahead. When I finally took the elevator down to the lobby, I found not just my mother waiting, but Jason and Amy as well. The three of them sat rigidly on a sofa near the artificial Christmas tree, drawing curious glances from other hotel guests checking out after their holiday stays. My mother spotted me first, rising quickly to her feet. She looked different than she had yesterday. The careful makeup replaced by a hastily applied foundation, the stylish outfit swapped for her everyday clothes. The transformation from Howard's sophisticated girlfriend back to my struggling mother was jarring. "Brant," she said, her voice carrying across the lobby. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you all night." I approached, slowly maintaining emotional distance, even as the physical distance closed between us. I turned my phone off. "Why would you do that? And what's going on with the accounts? And the credit cards?" Jason's card was declined last night, and Amy couldn't access the joint account this morning. I looked at each of them in turn, my mother with her poorly concealed anger, Jason with his defensive posture, Amy with her expertly crafted look of victimhood. These people were strangers to me now. "I think you know why," I said calmly. "I heard your conversation after Jason called me yesterday." My brother's face drained of color. "What conversation?" "The one where Mom said I still think helping with rent means I'm automatically included in family events. The one where you laughed about how I was good for the money. The one where you discussed cutting me off after Howard proposes." My mother's expression shifted rapidly from shock to calculation. She glanced around the hotel lobby, aware of the audience we were accumulating, and lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. "You misunderstood. We were just upset about the surprise visit. You know how I feel about unexpected changes to plans." "No, Mom. I think I understood perfectly. For years I've been supporting this family financially, while you've been gradually pushing me out emotionally. Yesterday was just the final confirmation of where I stand." "You're overreacting," Amy interjected. "It was one dinner, one Christmas." "It wasn't just Christmas," I replied, feeling strangely calm. "It was hearing you laugh about manipulating me. It was discovering that you've been lying to Howard about having a son who doesn't meet your status requirements. It was realizing that I'm only valuable to this family for my bank account." My mother stepped closer, dropping her voice even lower. "Brant, be reasonable. Howard's family is very particular about appearances. They're old money, and they judge people based on success and status. We couldn't exactly introduce my son, who lives in a studio apartment and drives a 10-year-old car." The casual cruelty of her assessment hit harder than expected. "I live in that studio apartment because I send $800 home every month for your rent. I drive that old car because I paid for Amy's college textbooks and Jason's phone bills. I sacrificed my own comfort and future to support all of you." "And we're grateful," Jason said quickly, "but—" "No," I interrupted. "You're not grateful. Grateful people don't mock the gifts they receive. Grateful people don't pretend not to know their benefactors. Grateful people don't laugh about taking advantage of someone's generosity." "What do you want from us?" my mother demanded, her pretense of contrition evaporating. "An apology. Fine. I'm sorry we hurt your feelings. Now, can you please restore the credit cards and put the rent payment back?" Her priorities couldn't have been clearer if she had written them on a billboard. The financial loss mattered. My emotional pain did not. "No," I said simply. "I'm done." Done with what Amy asked, real alarm crossing her face for the first time. Done supporting people who don't respect me. Done sacrificing my future for a family that sees me as an ATM rather than a son and brother. Done pretending we have a relationship when what we actually have is a one-sided financial arrangement. My mother's face hardened. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me. I raised you. I fed and clothed you. I sacrificed everything for you kids after your father left. And I've spent the last 5 years paying you back for that, Mom. But there's no amount of money that will ever be enough, is there? Because this isn't really about need anymore. It's about entitlement." The conversation was drawing even more attention now. A hotel employee hovered nearby, clearly concerned about the escalating tension. I decided to end things before they spiraled further. "I'm going back to Chicago," I said firmly. "I've removed myself from all joint accounts and canceled all authorized users on my credit cards. You'll need to make your own financial arrangements from now on." "You can't just cut us off," my mother hissed. "Family doesn't do that." "Family also doesn't pretend not to know each other to impress rich boyfriends," I replied. "It seems we all have different definitions of family obligations." Jason stepped forward, his expression darkening. "You know Mom can't afford that apartment without your help. Where are we supposed to live?" "Howard has a lakefront home," I reminded him. "I'm sure he'll be happy to help once he proposes, assuming your relationship with him isn't also built on lies." That struck a nerve. My mother's eyes widened, and Amy glanced away uncomfortably. "You're making a mistake," my mother said, her tone shifting to one. I recognized well the guilt-inducing voice that had kept me sending money all these years. "When you need family someday, we won't be there for you." I looked at her sadly. "You haven't been there for me in years, Mom. The only difference now is that I'm finally acknowledging it." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked toward the hotel exit. Behind me, I heard Amy begin to cry, the theatrical sob she had perfected since childhood to get her way. Jason called after me, his voice a mixture of anger and panic. My mother remained silent, which told me everything about her priorities. In the parking lot, I brushed snow off my car and loaded my overnight bag into the trunk alongside the Christmas presents that would never be opened by their intended recipients. As I pulled out of the hotel parking lot, I caught a final glimpse of my family through the lobby windows, huddled together already in deep discussion about their next move. The drive back to Chicago was long and quiet. No Christmas music, no phone calls, no festive stops along the way. Just 6 hours of highway stretching between who I had been and who I needed to become. Returning to my studio apartment in Chicago felt surreal. The small space I had always viewed as temporary, a sacrifice for my family's benefit, now represented something different. It was mine alone, a place where I could build a future, focused on my own well-being rather than perpetually rescuing others. The first few days after Christmas passed in a fog of second-guessing and emotional turbulence. Had I overreacted? Was cutting them off completely too extreme? Should I have had a conversation first, set boundaries, rather than severing ties? These doubts were answered by the flood of communications that followed. My email inbox filled with messages from extended family members, each more accusatory than the last. "How could you leave your mother without rent money? What kind of son abandons his family at Christmas? Your siblings are devastated by your selfishness." I hadn't blocked their email addresses, which proved to be illuminating. Through these messages, I discovered the narrative my mother had crafted. I had inexplicably cut them off, after years of minimal support, leaving them destitute at Christmas for no reason. She had apparently been laying groundwork for this scenario for years, telling relatives that I was stingy with my huge Chicago salary, and only reluctantly helped with occasional small expenses. The truth came from an unexpected source. My Aunt Ellen, my father's sister, who had remained loosely connected to my mother after the divorce, called me 3 days after Christmas. "Brant, it's Aunt Ellen. Do you have a minute to talk?" I braced myself for another lecture about family loyalty. "Yes, I do." "Good, because I want to understand what's really happening. Your mother called me crying about you cutting her off without warning, but something doesn't add up." Cautiously, I explained the situation, the monthly support I had been providing for years, the Christmas rejection, the overheard conversation revealing their true feelings. A long silence followed my explanation. "I had no idea you were supporting them to that extent," she finally said. "Your mother told everyone that you barely helped at all, that she was struggling to make ends meet because you were selfish with your money." "That's not true," I said, the familiar defensiveness rising. "I believe you," Aunt Ellen said firmly, "and it explains a lot. Your mother has been playing the struggling single-parent role for so long. I wondered how she afforded the new car last year. Or Amy's spring break trip to Florida. She said it was careful budgeting, but The conversation with Aunt Ellen revealed years of deception. My mother had been presenting herself as financially abandoned by both her ex-husband and her eldest son, garnering sympathy and occasional assistance from family members even while cashing my monthly checks. Meanwhile, the financial fallout for my family began to materialize. A week after Christmas, Jason called from a number I didn't recognize. He had apparently borrowed a friend's phone to bypass my blocks. "The landlord delivered an eviction notice today," he said without preamble. "We have 30 days to pay up or get out." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, genuinely meaning it. I didn't want my family homeless despite everything. "That's it, you're sorry. This is your fault, Brant. You knew we couldn't afford this place without your help." "You have options, Jason. Mom can ask Howard for help. You could get a full-time job instead of part-time. Amy could apply for additional student loans." "Howard broke up with Mom after Christmas," he said bitterly. "Apparently he had questions about her background that she couldn't answer convincingly. And the job market here is terrible, you know that." The news about Howard explained the increasingly desperate tone of my mother's messages. Her backup plan had evaporated, leaving her genuinely vulnerable for perhaps the first time since I had started supporting the family. I felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it aside. "I'm not responsible for housing all of you indefinitely. I've been doing it for 5 years, which is 5 years longer than most people would. I had to max out my credit card for textbooks this semester." Jason continued, ignoring my point. "I was counting on using yours for the rest." "You're taking classes. This was news to me. I thought you dropped out." "I re-enrolled last fall. Not that you ever asked." The revelation that Jason had returned to school without telling me, while still expecting my financial support, underscored the dysfunction in our relationship. Important life changes weren't shared. Only financial needs were communicated. Similar stories emerged in the weeks that followed. Amy called from a new number, tearful about having to withdraw from college mid-year because she couldn't afford the dormitory fees without my contribution. My mother left voicemails about being late on utility payments and facing service disconnections. Each call and message tested my resolve, prodding the lifetime of conditioning that had taught me to be the family rescuer. But something had fundamentally changed in me. I could empathize with their situation without automatically reaching for my wallet. I could recognize manipulation tactics that had previously been invisible to me. The most dramatic confrontation came in February when my mother appeared unannounced at my workplace. I was in a client meeting when the receptionist called. "There's a woman in the lobby claiming to be your mother," she said hesitantly. "She says it's an emergency." I excused myself from the meeting and found my mother sitting in the reception area, looking deliberately disheveled and clutching a tissue. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice level, "what are you doing here?" "You blocked my calls," she said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "What choice did I have? My son abandons me, refuses to even speak to me." I guided her to a quiet corner, acutely aware of curious glances from coworkers. "This isn't appropriate. You can't show up at my job." "We're being evicted," she said, dropping her voice. "Today, the sheriff is there now. Amy has nowhere to go." My stomach tightened. "What about Jason?" "He's staying with a friend. But Amy and I are going to a shelter, unless you help." "Is that what you want? Your mother and sister in a homeless shelter?" I looked at her, closely searching for signs of truth or manipulation. "Where are you parked?" "What?" "Your car. Where is it parked?" She hesitated. "In the visitor lot." "The same car you told me was repossessed last week, when you called from Jason's friend's phone." Her expression flickered. "I borrowed a friend's car." "Mom, I called the landlord yesterday. He said you worked out a payment plan and are not being evicted today, or any day soon." The transformation in her demeanor was immediate. The fragile, tearful woman disappeared, replaced by cold anger. "You're checking up on me." "I wanted to know the truth. You've lied about so many things." "I'm your mother. You owe me. I paid that debt many times over. 5 years and $100,000 worth." She stood up, abandoning the pretense of distress. "This isn't over, Brant. Family is forever." Yes, it is, I agreed quietly. But that doesn't make toxic relationships acceptable. After she left, I returned to my meeting professionally, composed but emotionally shaken. That evening, I did something I should have done years ago. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Dr. Melanie Richardson helped me identify patterns I had never recognized: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, conditional love based on utility. We explored my father's abandonment and how it had shaped my desperate need to be the good son who never left, never disappointed, never said no. Through therapy, I connected with a support group for people estranged from family. Their stories mirrored aspects of my own: the guilt, the societal pressure to reconcile regardless of abuse, the difficult journey toward establishing healthy boundaries. As winter melted into spring, I began rebuilding my life. I moved to a larger apartment in a nicer neighborhood. I started a retirement account and set up an emergency fund. I took a weekend trip to Michigan's Upper Peninsula, not to visit family, but to hike and explore areas of my home state I had never seen. I made new friends through a recreational soccer league and a book club. People who knew me as I was now, not as the designated family caretaker. People who valued my company rather than my wallet. The hardest part was handling the first holiday season after the estrangement. Thanksgiving loomed as a particularly difficult milestone, my first major holiday alone. A coworker named Tara noticed my subdued mood as the day approached. "What are you doing for Thanksgiving?" she asked casually, as we worked late on a project. "No plans," I admitted. "Maybe order takeout." She shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. You're coming to our orphan Thanksgiving. It's for everyone who can't go home or doesn't have family nearby." The gathering turned out to be exactly what I needed: a dozen people from various backgrounds sharing a potluck meal in Tara's apartment. No expectations, no history, no manipulation, just good food and genuine connection. As the winter holidays approached again, I donated the still unopened gifts meant for my family to a local charity. Watching volunteers load the laptop, gaming console, and tablet into their truck felt like releasing the last physical ties to my old life. My family's attempts at contact grew less frequent as the months passed. They had found other sources of support or adapted to living within their actual means. Amy occasionally sent text messages from new numbers, sometimes angry, sometimes conciliatory, always eventually circling back to requests for money. Jason stopped reaching out entirely after our last conversation ended with me refusing to co-sign a car loan for him. My mother's communications were the most persistent, but showed the least genuine interest in reconciliation. Her messages focused exclusively on what I could provide: money, of course, but also references for jobs, contacts for opportunities, co-signing for apartments. Never once did she express interest in my well-being or acknowledge the pain her actions had caused. 10 months after that fateful Christmas, I received an unexpected message from my sister. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no requests or accusations. "I've been thinking about last Christmas and everything that happened," she wrote. "I was wrong. We all were. I'm sorry for how we treated you and for taking your support for granted. I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know that I understand better now." The message ended without the usual plea for financial help or promise that things would be different if only I would resume my support. For the first time, it seemed like Amy was seeing our relationship clearly. I responded cautiously, thanking her for the apology, but maintaining firm boundaries. Our subsequent exchanges were tentative, but represented the first honest communication we had shared in years. As for my mother and brother, they remained unchanged, expecting without giving, demanding without appreciating. I maintained my distance, protecting the new life I was building brick by careful brick. 1 year after being turned away from my family's Christmas gathering, I stood in my new condo overlooking the Chicago River, reflecting on how much had changed. The 2-bedroom apartment represented more than upgraded square footage. It was tangible proof of what became possible when I stopped draining my resources into the bottomless pit of my family's needs. Financial freedom was just the beginning. I had promoted at work, taking on a leadership role that my previous stress and distraction had made impossible. I started an investment portfolio, setting up automatic contributions that would secure my future rather than finance my family's present. I even took my first real vacation, 2 weeks touring the Pacific Northwest, hiking through old-growth forests and sleeping under stars I had never had time to see before. The therapeutic journey had been equally transformative. Weekly sessions with Dr. Richardson gradually decreased to monthly check-ins as I developed stronger boundaries and healthier perspectives. The breakthrough moments weren't always dramatic. Sometimes they came as quiet realizations during ordinary days. Like the afternoon, I declined a last-minute work assignment without feeling crushing guilt. Or the evening I spent money on concert tickets without mentally calculating how many of my mother's utility bills that amount could cover. Or the first time I heard a friend describe family drama and didn't automatically offer financial assistance. Small victories that collectively rebuilt my sense of self-worth beyond what I could provide for others. My relationship with Amy evolved slowly over that year. After her initial apology, we established cautious communication, text messages about neutral topics, occasional phone calls that steered clear of financial discussions. When she graduated from community college that spring, I attended the ceremony, but declined to host the family celebration afterward. "I'm proud of you," I told her, sincerely, "but I'm not ready for extended family gatherings." She accepted this boundary without argument, a sign of genuine growth on her part. Later, she confided that losing my financial support had been the wake-up call she needed. "I always assumed someone would bail me out if things got tough," she admitted during a coffee meeting. "You, mom, some boyfriend, whoever. When that safety net disappeared, I had to figure things out for myself." She had taken on additional work-study hours, applied for scholarships she previously thought were too much effort, and developed a realistic budget for the first time in her life. The experience had been challenging, but ultimately empowering. "I appreciate everything you did for us," she said, meeting my eyes directly. "But I understand now why you had to stop." My relationship with Jason remained far more distant. Occasional updates from Amy indicated he had finally found steady employment at a local distribution center, working night shifts that he complained about, but that paid enough to support himself. He never reached out directly, though Amy hinted he had expressed regret about his role in the Christmas incident. "He's too proud to admit he was wrong," she explained. "But he keeps that photo of you two fishing at Grandpa's cabin on his dresser." As for my mother, the estrangement continued. She had moved in with a new boyfriend, not Howard the car dealer, but a retired postal worker with a modest pension and a small house in a neighboring town. She still sent occasional messages that oscillated between thinly veiled guilt trips and outright demands, but they no longer held emotional power over me. The holidays approached again, bringing with them the inevitable weight of family expectations. Thanksgiving was spent with Tara and the orphan group that had become cherished friends. For Christmas, I booked a solo trip to a mountain cabin in Colorado, a deliberate choice to create new associations with the holiday that had marked such a painful turning point in my life. On Christmas Eve, sitting beside a fireplace with a novel I had been meaning to read for months, I received a text message from my mother. Unlike her usual communications, this one was brief and surprisingly free of manipulation. "Thinking of you tonight. Merry Christmas." I sat with the message for a long while, contemplating the appropriate response. In the past, I would have seized on this as evidence of change, rushing to reconcile regardless of whether genuine transformation had occurred. Now I recognized it as a neutral communication that required neither immediate embrace nor outright rejection. "Merry Christmas to you too," I finally replied. Nothing more, nothing less, an acknowledgement without overcommitment. That simple exchange encapsulated the most profound lesson I had learned through this painful journey. I could acknowledge my family's existence, even maintain limited contact where healthy, without sacrificing my boundaries or well-being. I could love them from a distance without being consumed by their needs. or defined by their treatment of me. The path to healing wasn't about cutting off all contact forever or pretending my family didn't exist. It wasn't about holding grudges or seeking revenge. It was about establishing and maintaining boundaries that protected my financial, emotional, and psychological health. It was about recognizing that real love doesn't exploit or manipulate. It was about understanding that sometimes the most compassionate action for yourself and others is to stop enabling harmful patterns. As snow fell outside my cabin window, I reflected on how far I had come since standing shocked on my mother's porch as she pretended not to know me. The pain of that moment would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for growth and self-discovery that might never have happened otherwise. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who value what you provide more than who you are. Sometimes, true family is found not in blood relations, but in the connections you build with those who respect your boundaries and celebrate your success without expecting to profit from it. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most necessary healing. I raised my cup of hot chocolate in a silent toast to the painful Christmas that had ultimately set me free. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining unhealthy family relationships or protecting your own well-being? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about setting boundaries and finding self-worth. Remember that sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's making space for something better. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to value yourself as much as you value others.